You're looking at Lucy Letby, a nurse who, over the course of a single year working in a hospital, took the lives of 7 newborn babies. Proving it wasn't simple. Understanding why she did it is even harder. How exactly did she kill these infants while hiding her crimes in plain sight? Right there, inside a hospital full of doctors, nurses, and grieving parents. And what does a secret love interest have to do with any of it? This is footage of Lucy Letby's arrest. She's being walked out of her house and placed into a police vehicle. No resistance, no protests, no anger. Just sadness written all over her face. The only thing she says is, "I had knee surgery," to explain why she's moving slowly. After that, Lucy Letby would never set foot in her home again. Young, ambitious, from a good family, with the career she had always dreamed of. The kind of life thousands of women work toward. So where and when did it all go wrong? Let's start from the beginning. Hereford, England, January 4th, 1990. Susan and John Letby welcomed their only child, their one and only daughter. Lucy came into the world premature, and her condition was critical. It was only under the round-the-clock care of the nurses in the NICU that she slowly began to stabilize. Once she was fully out of danger, her relieved, grateful family thanked the medical staff from the bottom of their hearts and finally brought their baby girl home. Her parents loved Lucy and gave her everything loving parents possibly could. When she was old enough to understand, her mother told her the story of the nurses who had saved her life in her very first days. That story hit something deep in the little girl. From that moment on, she had one dream: to grow up and become a nurse who took care of babies, just like those nurses had once taken care of her. After finishing high school in a local college, Lucy enrolled at the University of Chester to study nursing. She threw herself into the program, mastered the material quickly and enthusiastically, earned top grades, and never missed a single class. The career she'd always wanted was getting closer. In 2012, Lucy landed a position as a nurse in the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital. She gradually built herself a reputation as a true specialist. Outside of her parents back in Hereford, Lucy had no real family to speak of. She wasn't dating anyone. She had very few friends, and the ones she did have were essentially just co-workers. So she poured every bit of her time and energy into caring for the babies in that unit. On her days off, she took additional courses in newborn care. She was doing everything in her power to become the absolute best in her field, even at the expense of any kind of personal life. At the hospital, Lucy was known as a top-tier nurse. She executed every procedure flawlessly, was borderline obsessive about her work, and held other staff to the same standard she held herself. She always seemed to be around, picking up the most shifts, constantly checking in on others, asking over and over whether certain tasks had been done, and monitoring patients who were technically assigned to other nurses. That rubbed some people the wrong way, but it never escalated into actual conflict. Lucy was mostly just seen as someone who couldn't stop poking her nose into other people's business and didn't seem to care about basic professional etiquette. Maybe, people figured, she just loved her job so much she was trying to do all of it herself. But the parents of her infant patients occasionally noticed strange things too. Lucy was there for everything, every single meaningful moment a family experienced in that unit. First bath, first feeding. Lucy was right there. You could chalk it up to just doing her job, especially when new parents didn't know what they were doing yet. But it was constant. Parents could feel her eyes on them even before they realized she was in the room. Sometimes they'd catch her watching them through the window from the hallway, that signature smile of hers on her face. She was everywhere, always, and it started to feel genuinely unsettling. But despite her off-putting intensity, which made some staff uncomfortable, she still had a solid professional reputation overall. After 3 years at the hospital, Lucy received a small but significant promotion. She was approved to work in the neonatal intensive care unit. One doctor later described that unit as the safest place in the world. He had no idea how wrong he was. In her new role, Lucy was now caring for the most fragile and medically unstable infants, mostly premature babies in incubators. These babies were somewhat more protected from the outside world, but they were still incredibly vulnerable. Each nurse on that unit was responsible for 3 to 4 infants at a time. Lucy had landed exactly where she'd always wanted to be since childhood. Now she too had the chance to save lives right at their very beginning. Though it's possible that, somewhere along the way, her priorities had quietly shifted. Starting in the summer of 2015, the unit began losing its tiny patients at an alarming rate. The families of the victims asked to remain anonymous, which is why the babies were referred to simply by letters of the alphabet. A through Q. 17 letters. 17 babies. In June of 2015, a patient came into the unit who was pregnant with twins. It was her first pregnancy, and it hadn't been going well. Doctors scheduled a C-section at 31 weeks. The premature twins, baby boy A and baby girl B, were immediately placed in incubators. Everything seemed stable until June 8th, when baby A's heart stopped without warning. Doctors had no explanation. They tried everything to save him, but nothing worked. He was going to be taken off life support, so the parents were brought in to say goodbye to their newborn son. The medical staff stepped outside to give the family privacy in their grief. Lucy stayed. She stood there and watched. Later, she handed the mother a set of handprints and footprints she had made of the baby while he was still alive. Do all nurses do that? No, they don't. So why did Lucy? Good question. But the mother had no mental space for it. All she could think about was her dead son, the baby she would never bring home. The very next day, baby B, the surviving twin, began showing the same symptoms as another infant in the unit, baby C. Doctors managed to save baby B, but on June 14th, baby C died, less than a week after baby A. His official cause of death was listed as a heart condition caused by a lung disease. 2 babies dead in a single week. Before this, the unit might lose 2 or 3 infants over the course of an entire year. The staff was shattered. Some doctors took leave. The ones who stayed worked under a suffocating weight. No jokes, no laughter. People only speaking when absolutely necessary. Then came baby D. She wasn't premature like the 3 before her, but a long and complicated delivery had left her in serious condition. She was placed in an incubator, and her heart stopped 3 times. Twice, doctors brought her back. Oxygen mask, a series of interventions. But the 3rd time, nothing worked. On June 22nd, baby D died, her cause of death listed as pneumonia. Her parents came home to find that relatives had quietly moved all of the baby's things behind closed doors so the couple wouldn't have to face them. The little girl's body was cremated on the day the doctors had originally scheduled her birth. That was its own particular kind of pain, for the whole family and far beyond it. 3 babies dead in the month of June alone. Rumors started circulating through the staff. Some people muttered about a curse. Others talked about an epidemic or something wrong with the water. But there were those who were starting to suspect something far darker. One of them was Dr. Stephen Breary, the lead consultant of the neonatal unit. This was his department, his responsibility. So he set out to find an explanation. He pulled together all the documentation and reports from June, spread them across his desk, and found something that confirmed what he'd been afraid to think. Every single one of the 4 incidents had occurred on Lucy Letby's shift. Not definitive proof, but impossible to ignore. Dr. Breary reported his findings to hospital management. Nothing happened. Lucy Letby stayed on the unit. In early August, 2 more baby boys arrived, premature twins, born 7 weeks early. Babies I and F were critically weak, each weighing less than 3.5 pounds. In the early hours of August 4th, the boys' mother decided to check on her sons and found Nurse Lucy standing over baby I's incubator. The mother came closer to look at her son and saw blood coming from his mouth. Lucy immediately turned the mother around and guided her back toward her own room. "Trust me, I'm a nurse," she said, and explained the blood away as irritation from the oxygen tube. That was it. 2 hours later, the baby was dead. His official cause of death was listed as a bowel infection, picked up during a difficult delivery. Lucy offered to help the grieving parents. She personally bathed the baby and dressed him in an outfit she had chosen and gifted to them on behalf of the unit. He was buried in that outfit. Less than 24 hours after the first twin died, his brother, baby F, nearly died as well. His blood showed an extremely elevated level of insulin, though by some miracle he survived. The explanation given was that his body was producing too much insulin on its own, because every nurse on the ward swore up and down that no one had added insulin to any of his feeds. But it kept going. In early September, a baby girl arrived, born 15 weeks premature. At the time she entered the NICU, baby G weighed just under a pound. She could fit in the palm of an adult's hand. On September 7th, her 100th day of life, Lucy Letby overfed her with milk to the point where the baby vomited and developed serious complications. Baby G had to be transferred to another hospital where she fully recovered. Then she was brought back to the Countess of Chester, where Lucy overfed her again, multiple times, triggering serious health crises each time. Baby G survived, but she was left with permanent disabilities. Today she is blind, uses a wheelchair due to spinal deformity, and can only eat through a feeding tube. The next death in the unit came on October 23rd, the 5th death in 5 months. Baby girl, I, came within a hair's breadth of dying 4 separate times. Doctors saved her 3 times. On the 4th, they couldn't. An autopsy found a significant buildup of gas in her stomach and intestines, and brain damage from the first 3 incidents. And of course, all of these episodes had occurred exclusively on Lucy Letby's shifts. Around that same time, Dr. Ravi Jayaram witnessed something that pushed him to go to management, not just with a concern, but practically with an accusation. He was walking past a room where Lucy was working when he heard the kind of alarm that signals a serious problem inside an incubator, the kind that requires immediate attention. The alarm went silent after a few seconds, as if someone had turned it off. He looked into the room and saw Nurse Letby calmly sorting through paperwork at her desk. He quickly scanned each incubator and found one baby who had been disconnected from the oxygen tube and was effectively suffocating. In that moment, looking at the infant, it was baby K. Dr. Jayaram ran over and did everything he could to restore the baby's breathing. He managed to. When he looked over at Lucy with a what-the-hell expression, he was stunned by what he saw. She just kept sorting her paperwork, didn't even look up. But the doctor could tell she was only pretending to be busy. He had clearly heard the alarm from the hallway. She had been standing right there, and yet she hadn't gone to check on the baby, just paperwork. He went straight to management and reported everything. They closed their eyes to it again. The day after Baby I's funeral, her parents received a handwritten card from Lucy. "I have no words to make this time any easier. Caring for Baby I, and getting to know you as a family has been an honor. You always put her first, and did everything you needed to do. She will always be a part of your lives, and we will never forget her. Thinking of you today and always. I'm sorry I can't be there to say goodbye. It's not standard practice for nurses to send personal letters like this to their patients' families. But once again, nobody said anything. Nobody reacted. Lucy wasn't doing anything wrong, exactly. If anything, she seemed to be going above and beyond to support her patients. She had spent a lot of time with Baby I's family, so maybe she genuinely just wanted to reach out. People gave her the benefit of the doubt. Meanwhile, Doctors Jayaram, Breary, and 2 other colleagues had begun quietly gathering evidence that Lucy was connected to every one of those deaths. And then the incident stopped. For roughly the next 6 months, the unit didn't lose a single baby. But in April 2016, the nightmare came back. Twin boys, babies L and M, were admitted to the unit. On April 9th, both of them nearly died during Lucy's shift, one from a dangerous excess of insulin in his blood, the other from air that had entered his bloodstream. Both brothers survived, but the second one sustained brain damage. The 4 doctors met again and went back to hospital management with what they believed was mounting evidence that Lucy was responsible. This time, management decided to essentially prove them wrong. How? They moved Lucy from night shifts to day shifts, because up to that point, the deaths had only been happening at night. But that only deepened the doctors' suspicions, because now the critical incidents started happening during the day too. In June 2016, a set of triplets arrived, 3 baby boys, N, O, and P. On June 3rd, the first of the brothers nearly died. By June 24th, he was the only one of the 3 still alive. Both of his brothers had died from air entering their stomachs and intestines. Before they died, doctors had been frantically trying to stabilize them for transfer to another hospital where they might be saved. During that chaos, Lucy said something that made a fellow nurse's blood run cold. "He's not going to leave here alive, is he?" That nurse later recalled that she had heard Lucy say the exact same thing a year earlier, right before baby C died. The deaths of 2 of the triplets became a turning point. That same day, Dr. Breary personally called the hospital's on-duty manager and demanded that Lucy Letby be suspended immediately. He was ignored again. Instead, management arranged for an independent review of the unit, which confirmed that at least 4 of the deaths warranted a thorough investigation. But even then, even after that, the hospital's leadership did not contact the police. Instead, they reduced the number of babies the unit would accept and stopped taking premature infants altogether. Lucy was eventually removed from patient care and transferred to a patient safety specialist role. But here's where it gets almost incomprehensible. Hospital leadership was so convinced that Lucy couldn't possibly be responsible that a couple of weeks after her transfer, the hospital's CEO personally went to her home and apologized. Apologized to her for the rumors and accusations surrounding her. He then forced the 4 doctors, who had been building a case against her, to apologize to Lucy as well, which they did. They sent her written apologies, formal cards, personal letters expressing their regret. But 2 of those doctors had reached their limit. They went to the police. On their own, without the hospital's knowledge or permission, they handed over everything they had collected and walked an officer through the entire situation. They were fully aware they were risking their careers by going to the police behind the hospital's back. But they felt they had no choice. The people running the Countess of Chester Hospital had an opportunity to raise their hands and admit they were wrong. And that's what angers me more than almost anything else. They were still trying to justify why their actions had been right. One of them actually said, We just didn't voice our concerns loudly enough. How loud did we need to be? We were loud enough for you to humiliate us. Loud enough for you to push some of us out the door and into jobs at other hospitals. The investigation was finally underway. It lasted a full year. In February 2018, Lucy Letby was arrested for the first time. The families of all the affected babies were notified, and they were horrified. The nurse who had smiled at them, stood beside them, and supposedly cared for their children had actually been involved in their deaths. That same year, in June, Lucy was released and arrested 2 more times. After the 3rd arrest, she didn't go home again. Detectives searched her house. Inside, they found medical records belonging to the deceased infants, their charts, their blood test results. Also on her phone was a photo of the card she had sent to Baby I's family on the day of the funeral. Taking patient records home is strictly prohibited. But Lucy didn't just have a few documents. Underneath her bed, there was an entire collection. Far too many to explain away as accidental. When asked about them, Lucy said she just liked collecting them. They were her trophies. In Lucy's personal diary, investigators found the following entry written in her own handwriting.
I am evil. I did this. I killed them on purpose because I wasn't good enough to care for them. I am a horrible person. I cry about this every day. I feel so lonely and so scared. I don't deserve life. I don't deserve my mom and dad. I hate myself.
Police also discovered that Lucy had been extraordinarily active on Facebook, specifically on the pages of the deceased babies' families. She had visited those pages approximately 20,000 times in a single year. That works out to roughly 6 times a day. She was particularly drawn to the memorial posts parents put up in remembrance of their children. Lucy's explanation: I was just curious. That's all. Detectives categorize this behavior as something called grief vampirism, a pattern where killers feed off the mourning of their victims' families. That theory was backed up by accounts from nurses on the unit, who recalled at least 2 separate occasions when parents had asked staff to tell Lucy to leave the room during their goodbyes with their dying babies. So police had established that Lucy was obsessively fixated on both her work and the families who lost infants. She was also present, on shift, during every single death and every near miss. Her colleagues' and patients' statements consistently pointed to deeply strange and suspicious behavior. But the question remained: how had she done it? And why? The answer to the second question came from Lucy's phone, where investigators found a text message thread between her and a doctor at the same hospital, a married man with children who worked in a different department. The nature of that conversation could only be described as heavily flirtatious, to put it mildly. Every time a baby died in the unit, Lucy would text him about it. He would offer her comfort and support. They had gone out for coffee together on multiple occasions, and had even spent a day together in London. At trial, Lucy denied any romantic involvement with the doctor, insisting she loved him only as a friend. But based on what detectives read in those messages, he was her boyfriend, or at least the closest thing she had to one. You're one of the few nurses in the region, and I've worked in a lot of places, that I would trust with my own children, the doctor had texted Lucy after yet another baby died under her care. It began to look like every death was, at least in part, Lucy's attempt to get his attention. That was a motive. It wasn't the whole picture, but it was something. When investigators looked at the methods, the causes of death varied enough that no one had initially gone looking for a pattern. But when you laid all the cases side by side, a clear signature emerged. Most of the babies had died from air being introduced into their bodies, either directly into a vein or into the stomach. 4 infants died from air embolisms, air injected into a vein, which creates something like a clot, and 2 more were saved from the same. 2 babies died from air accumulation in the stomach and intestines. 1 infant died when a nasogastric tube was deliberately advanced too far down their throat, and 3 others were saved from the same thing. 2 babies received milk feeds laced with insulin. Only 1 survived. And here's the thing. Lucy Letby was an exceptionally skilled nurse. The kind of error that causes air to accidentally enter a vein during an injection, or a feeding tube to be placed incorrectly. Those aren't mistakes someone at her level makes. Her colleagues had put her on a pedestal for her technical precision. She simply couldn't have made that many mistakes. If she did these things, she did them on purpose. At trial, Lucy Letby was charged with 7 counts of murder and 7 counts of attempted murder. She did not plead guilty, but she also didn't deny it, not in any real way. She was quiet throughout the proceedings, minimal in what she said, and as one detective observed, she cried when talking about herself. She remained stone-faced when the children were discussed. The Letby family attended every single hearing. Right up until the end, her parents maintained that their daughter was simply incapable of doing what she was accused of. A close friend of Lucy's from university made a statement. "I will believe Lucy is guilty only if she comes to me herself and says, 'I did this.'" The jury found Lucy Letby guilty on all 7 counts of murder and all 7 counts of attempted murder. The judge, in delivering the verdict, stated, "You acted in a way that was contrary to every natural human instinct to protect and nurture newborn babies, and you grossly violated the trust that every member of the public places in those who work in medical settings." Lucy Letby was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This came in July 2024, not very long ago. She had filed multiple appeals before this, but not a single one was even accepted for review. For the final sentencing hearing, Lucy refused to appear in court at all. Her parents, who had attended every previous hearing without fail, also didn't show up this time. Her absence during the reading of the final judgment was widely condemned as the ultimate act of contempt toward the families of her victims. Those families showed up anyway and read their impact statements aloud, describing in detail what losing their babies had done to them and to everyone who loved those children. Lucy Letby's parents have since relocated to be closer to the prison where their daughter is serving her sentence. I believe it is right and just that she will spend the rest of her life behind bars with no chance of ever walking free, given what she did. But none of that changes the fact that the parents of those babies, and everyone who loved them, will never get back what was taken from them.